I've loved and cared for the land on which we stand, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and future. I also wish to acknowledge my fellow councillors here this morning, Councillor Sue Cassidy, Councillor Tony Herbert and Councillor Peter Hewan. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you all here today. We are so pleased that so many of you, representing such an important cross-section of our community, have made the effort to be here. Not only giving up your Saturday morning sleep in or early morning walk, but giving up your whole day. And that really says something. We are all here, united by our desire to see our community of Warrnambool and our southwest region flourish into the future. And we've been delighted to have had so many people involved in the process so far, with more than the input of 2,000 people. That's a really impressive turnout and a really impressive engagement, because a lot of the surveys, etc., that got us here with the data were quite lengthy and involved, and people did take the time to do them, giving us so much extraordinary data. And that input brings us forward to today, where we are, as the W2040 panel, now responsible for bringing forward those ideas into a draft plan. So we're here to capture our shared aspirations, ambitions and visions, so that everyone here today, representing the broader community, can own them and take them where they need to go. We have a very interesting day ahead of us. We shall be ably led by Amy Hubbard of Kapia. We'll be inspired by Steve Yarwood, former Lord Mayor of Adelaide, where he took Adelaide on a similar and very successful journey. But most importantly, today we are here to listen to you. And we will have time for discussion and collaboration. So I want to thank you again for making the time to be here. You could be doing anything, but you've put yourselves here for your community. And on that note, I'd like you all to stand up. Oh, that's good. I thought you'd take a bit more time to do that. It's very good. Please do something for me here. Turn to the person next to you, on either side, around you, and thank them for making the time to be here today. All right, that's enough talk. That was easier than I thought. Thank you very, very much. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you the CEO of Warrnambool City Council, Mr. Bruce Anson.
Thanks, Kylie. Boy, isn't it great to see so many people that are up, showered, shaved on a Saturday morning. I'm really impressed. And there's even some bright eyes out there, so that's absolutely colossal. Just as Kylie said, look, thanks for giving up or committing your day to our city. This is an important process, and some of the stuff I'll go through hopefully will explain why it is so important. W2040 is about setting a longer-term vision for our city that's set by our community. The importance of that is currently Council's planning process is a 4-year planning process. So every 4 years we elect another council, or a continuation of the council, has different council members. And they'll sit down and do from a blank piece of paper, do a 4-year plan. Whilst that's a good start, what it doesn't have reference to is a long-term community vision. So part of this process, and it's not just about the council, it is about our health authorities, our education guys, our water boards, etc. But what this process will do is clearly set out the signposts for the future of where our community wants to head. And when the council comes in every 4 years, it will have a reference document that the community has built. So that's a fantastic process, and that's why this process, I hate that word, but that's why this exercise is so important. Recently, Sue Cassidy, Kylie, and Robert Anderson and myself had an opportunity to go to our sister city in Chanchun, and we went to the Chanchun Planning Museum. Now, some of you may have heard me say I was particularly excited about going to a planning museum in Chanchun, but it was absolutely one of the most amazing things that I've been to. And what they had is they had a vision of what their city will be like in 2070. Now, it'll never be achieved, but they have a vision of what they're aiming for, what their power generation will be, where their cycling paths, where their railway systems will be, how their airports function, alternative power, where their public open space, where their community spaces will be. Now, they'll probably never get there, and 2070 will never look exactly like what they've got on that plan. And when I'm talking plan, I'm talking a building probably half the size of the MCG that will be open to the public so that they can go through. But what they're clearly saying is this is what they're aspiring to. And that's what 2040 is about for us. This is what we're aspiring to. What we're planning probably won't look anything like reality in 2040, but it will give the community and a whole lot of organisations their signpost of where our community wants to go. Next slide, Amy. I'm good on the slides. They're the players, okay? Everyone's got a role in this, but it's principally aimed at the community. Everyone has a role in defining our future. Council's role, this is not just a council plan, okay? And I think that's the important bit. What the community in this exercise is saying is what its aspirations are for its health services, for its education, for its environment, for the way our community operates. So the council role in this is as a service provider, as an advocate, but more importantly in this case, as a facilitator. And so, the work that our staff have been doing together with Neve and Amy have just been absolutely colossal, but it is about the involvement and the participation of other organisations that's critical, and that's the facilitating role that we've played. This is the last slide. And again, I think I've already said it, but 2040 is our signpost. It's our guidepost of where our community wants its city, what it wants its city, its community, its facilities to be like in 2040. And so, thank you for your participation today. It's fabulous to be here on a Saturday morning, all day Saturday. And that you've committed your time to our community. So thank you very much. Now, Amy, you're about to jump up and do the next bit. I was tempted to sing, but...
Go, why not? Thank you, Bruce. Welcome, everyone. How are you all feeling? Feeling excited? There's definitely some smiles. A few familiar faces in the room. Good to see you all here on a Saturday morning. I'm going to tell you a bit about how the mechanics of the day are going to work, and also about our expectations of you, because today is all about you. It's all about us, it's about you. But first of all, I think we should take this opportunity to get up and go and meet two people that you don't know. Two people you don't know. I know a lot of people know nearly everyone in the room. Kylie, you probably know. Bruce, you probably know a fair proportion, no? So I'm going to invite you now, get up and go and meet two people you don't know. Introduce yourself and why you're here today. Okay, Okay, so now it's about getting ready. I'm going to hand you over to my colleague Neve Moynihan, who has been the project manager of a lot of the consultation that's gone into informing Warrnambool 2040, to give you a bit of an overview of the process and the priorities. So thanks, Neve.
Thank you, Amy. I'd just like to mention who I got to meet. This is a really rare occurrence. I got to meet another Neve. Neve's over there. Neve's 3 months old. So thanks, Neve. As Amy mentioned, we've been working with Council for most of this year. We've been down in Warrnambool nearly once a month. And we've also been working with Warrnambool, so we know Warrnambool quite well. We know the community quite well. And I've definitely met a couple of you in this room today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the process that we're currently in and where we're going, and then a bit about what we heard in phase 1. So Amy and Lisa and I came up with a strategy for the engagement for Warrnambool 2040, but Council have done all of the heavy lifting in terms of implementing it and doing the engagement with yourselves. So I'd just really like to commend Council. They've done an extremely magnificent effort, and we've gotten a lot of really great feedback. Without that feedback, I wouldn't be able to share with you what I have today. So a little bit about where we are. So in June, from April to June this year was phase 1, and that was a bit of an introduction about what is Warrnambool 2040, but it was a really good opportunity for Council to hear from you. In terms of that, there was a survey. So did anyone complete a survey? Oh, excellent, thank you. Just so you know, it took about a month to analyse all of those results. We got nearly 2,000 surveys. Originally, we'd hoped to get 500. So I spent a lot of time reading your responses. And that gave us a lot of great information about what people love and like to keep, what they'd like to change, and how they would like to see the future of Warrnambool. How we did that, you may have attended an active hub, completed a survey online, attended a briefing, or your organisation may have completed a conversation toolkit. The project website was really active as well as Facebook through the Connect Warrnambool page. Oh, sorry, I'll just come back. So at the moment, we've completed phase 1 and now we're in phase 2. So out of all of that information, we've come up with some of the priorities, and I'm going to share with you what you told us the priorities are for people, place, economy and the environment. Right now, we're in the middle portion of that triangle, and that's phase 2. So today, as Amy mentioned, is about confirming the goals and agreeing those priorities, and then looking at what are the outcomes of those priorities if we achieve them. Then in early next year, Council will present a draft plan. So when you see that draft plan, you'll see a lot of the work from today. So, what you told us as the priorities. I'll start with place. So one of the first things that came through was, as a priority in terms of Warrnambool as a place, the way we move around Warrnambool, it's key to have access to and provision of community and recreation facilities. As community members, you shared with us the importance of those facilities, and you talked about the quality of the sporting facilities, but you'd like to see that continue. You'd like to see more, particularly in Warrnambool's role as a recreational facility and sports centre. The other thing that you talked about was the coastal setting and the country town feel. And this came through in terms of how we protect Warrnambool's character as a place. So one of the things you said to us was it's important that we protect and acknowledge Warrnambool's heritage, including its Aboriginal heritage, historic buildings and facades. And that look and feel of Warrnambool is quite important, but how do we balance that with new growth? The third priority that you shared was enhancing the road network, including connectivity and public transport, as well as providing more walking and cycling paths. So moving on to people and economy, people and the community. One of the things that came through in the surveys is that Warrnambool is quite a friendly place and it's quite inclusive. However, if you're newly arrived in Warrnambool, it's a hard community to crack into, but once you do, you're in. So in terms of what you'd like to see as a priority for the community, you said promoting a healthier, active and safer community. And the ways in which you suggested this was high quality infrastructure to support healthy lifestyles and promote physical exercise. And some of the concerns that came through was about illicit drug use and alcohol and substance abuse. And the way to achieve, to reduce this in the community was to create a healthier environment and particularly looking for our younger people as well. The third priority for people was about improved healthcare and greater access to mental health services. And this came through as well that in terms of looking at mental health and the access for health services, you'd like to see more, you'd like to know more information about how you can access those services within your community. And the other thing that came through was about helping people to remain in place and looking at their healthcare services to support the ageing population. Now moving to our environment. What you talked about was the preservation and maintenance of the existing natural environment. And that's something that's really highly valued, particularly within the coastal setting of Warrnambool. So things that came through about the cleanliness and safety of the natural environment, protecting the environment, including wildlife, the recognition of the environment's importance, and increasing the care and responsibility of the community to care for the environment. The other thing that you talked about as a priority was to see increased greenery across the city. And you talked about this in terms of the trees, the streetscapes, having more publicly edible gardens, more native plants, and an increase in green links connecting people around the city to different parks. Thirdly, for environment, you said you'd like to see improved community environmental awareness, and you'd like for people to be more aware of their behaviours and their impact on the environment. And you've got some big goals about Warrnambool's reputation, and you'd like to see it to be recognised as an environmentally sustainable city, and that the community needs to be active and work together to achieve this. Fourthly, you'd like to see Warrnambool to decrease its impact on the environment and look at and achieve this through a transition to renewable energy, reducing pollution, waste, increasing recycling, and increasing sustainable transport use. The other point that was raised around this was promoting innovation and adoption of technologies that reduce impact on the environment. And our last area, which is economy. You would like to see Warrnambool be a leader in food production and tourism, so building on some of those existing industries that Warrnambool's already recognised for. You would like to see Warrnambool encourage growth and to thrive and embrace the future. You'd also like to see Warrnambool embrace innovation and the development of new industries. And as part of these new industries, looking at how they can add to a vibrant city that welcomes and rewards innovation. And the last point is that you would like to see Warrnambool meets the needs of the expanding population with education and employment opportunities. And education was something that came through quite strongly, and there was a bit of uncertainty about the future of Deakin remaining, but also looking at what are the course offerings and do those course offerings match the future jobs that we need. So that's all from me. You will hear a bit more about this in your sessions. So there will be a presentation from your theme expert who will talk a bit further. You'll have some opportunity to discuss these in your group. So thank you. Anyway.
Thanks, Neil. Just while we've got her here, up the front, Neve, anyone got any questions or comments from any of that? Nothing? Oh, we've got one. Okay.
Of the people surveyed, how many people are we talking about again?
1,943. Close. Oh, sorry, 1,243 for the long surveys.
And how many surveys would you have sent out?
So the survey was available online and in hard copy, and also a shortened version through a conversation toolkit.
Okay, so none were sent out to the community in general?
Not in hard copy. So people were advised about the survey through advertisement, letter drops.
Okay, thanks.
And sorry, the rates notice.
Okay, any other comments, questions, observations? Nothing, just looking at all your faces, nothing? Okay. Neve, you can take a seat and relax. Okay. Let's just get a feel for who's in the room. So, who, just by show of hands, who is here representing business and industry? You might have multiple hats on today. So one of your hats may be business and industry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. Who's here from a sporting or community club or organisation? Okay. All right, so about 12. Governmenty people, can be local government, can be elected representatives, can be state government. Okay, we've already got multiple hats in the room. Yep, okay, quite a few of you there. Who's a student? Welcome. Environment group or a sustainability organisation or a community garden. Okay, quite a few of you there as well. Arts and culture. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, okay. Yeah. Some people are wearing every hat. So, who's just a very passionate community member? That's a lot of you. Yeah, most of you, good. Well, who else? Who else is in the room? Who did I miss? What hats are you wearing? Health? Was it here, health? Yep. Okay, quite a few health people. Anyone else? International relations? 1, 2, 3. Construction industries here? Anyone else? Are you from the construction industry? Anyone else from the construction industry? Okay, another couple, 3, 4. Anyone else? Agriculture. Are you wearing an agriculture hat? Anyone else wearing an agriculture hat today? 3, 4, 5, 6. Any more takers? Okay. Any other hats in the room? Tourism, which could also include interest in music. Hello? Music, tourism. Yep. All right. Okay. There are a lot of hats in this room. So I just wanted to get a feel for who was here. And what is great about just doing that exercise is that a lot of you wear many hats, but there's a real mix of interest in the room. So that's what we wanted here today. So thank you. Now I am going to introduce Stephen Yarwood. I'm not going to say very much about you, Stephen, because you like talking. Stephen is a futurist. He formerly the Lord Mayor of the City of Adelaide. We heard Stephen speak a couple of weeks ago. He's amazing, so get ready. This is going to be fun. So over to Stephen.
Thanks very much for that. I think, Amy, I appreciate that. Now there's a clicker here. Well, firstly, going to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country, our Mayor, Your Worship. I met a councillor. We had a great conversation. I'm not going to quote you on some of the things you said, but no, it was a really great conversation. CEO, and I'm just wondering who else. I'm also going to thank Lisa for inviting me here today. But most importantly, and I mean no disrespect to you, Your Worship, but I'm going to acknowledge the most important people in the room, and that is you. And it's fantastic that you're here. I really want to acknowledge that you're giving up your time today, and that you actually give a crap about the city, and you bother to get out here and do some stuff. So I'm really, really stoked that you're here. And I'm going to also stress firstly that I'm not here from Adelaide to tell you how to do anything. I really acknowledge that you are the world experts on Warrnambool, and that it's up to you today to help define that vision. I've been engaged because I've been fascinated with the future of cities for a very long time, and I'm just going to give you a grab bag of some kind of relatively crazy ideas that will hopefully help you think about the future of your community in a different way. So just a couple of quick stories about myself. Is that I did a town planning degree in 1992, so I'm a qualified town planner. And I've worked in state government, worked in local government, I've worked in parliament. I got sick and tired of giving advice to elected members, so I quit my job because I had an amazing wife and knocked on lots of doors and became a councillor. When I was doing my planning degree, though, I must say, Adelaide was doing a 2020 vision, and so that was in the 1990s, and I had a chance to work in the office. And it was at that time that I decided I was really interested in the future of cities. And so I started thinking about this, and I got to the point where I was telling my planning profession in particular that one day we'd have these Star Trek-like handheld devices that would be able to talk to each other and see each other, and would change how people would view cities. And I spent the next 10 years of my life, my planning profession life, being laughed at by my colleagues. They thought I was a complete twit. And so, of course, now, I think you know what they're called. They're called smartphones. And there's no question they're changing how people are using cities. But I'm not resting on my laurels. I still want to be laughed at by my colleagues. So I've got some really crazy ideas about the next generation of how technology is going to change cities as well. Today. But yeah, I was very privileged. Very quick story here. Born in Whyalla, working class background, public school, single parent household, all of that stuff. And so there's nothing rich or elite about me. I'm just a rat bag that cracked the code and got away with being a Lord Mayor. I still can't believe I got away with it. So just sort of appreciate anything I say is about being enthusiastic and realising that I've had a great cracker and great run at it. But so what I did is I didn't put any posters up around the city. I actually designed my own flyers, did everything by myself, put 20 grand on my credit card. I walked 800 kilometres in 4 months, which, by the way, means that I would have walked from Adelaide through here to Melbourne in 4 months. I call that bleeding feet, and if any elected member ever knocks on your door, offer them a glass of water and some shade and a seat, okay? If they bother to knock on your door, they care, and you should treat them with dignity and respect. If you don't like them, keep them longer so they can't knock on other people's doors. Right. So, and why am I not Lord Mayor now? Because I know someone might ask me that. The traditional pub owners didn't like the new small bars. The tuck shops didn't like all the new food trucks. The oldies didn't like the bike lanes and the street art and a whole range of other things. And we also planted lots of trees, but they weren't very big when we planted them. Now they're starting to, have a really substantial effect on the city. A whole range of other things. So I won the primary vote by a mile, had 4 people run against me, and on a preferential countback, I lost by 182 votes. Oh, that's okay, because now what I'm doing is I came up with this notion of City 2050. Every city in the world will do a 2050 plan. Even Warrnambool one day will do a 2050 plan. But I want to give them credit for doing a 2040 plan, because I don't believe any other city I've come across is doing that. So Hobson's Bay in the western suburbs doing a 2035 plan, etc. And so I was seen speaking at a community engagement conference about the future of cities, and I was invited to come here and speak to you today. So I wanted to talk about the future. Now, one of my biggest things, and the reason I'm doing this, is because I'm really freaked out that most of our cities, our states and our nations are run by a bunch of old people who are using the last 20 years of their life to extrapolate that and think that's what the future looks like, and they make their plans around that. And that's like planning the future by looking in a rear vision mirror. It's wrong, and I'll give you some examples of why that is today. Now, I'm going to do a little game, because I have got 55 minutes. I get paid to speak. Okay, I like to speak, but I get paid to do it. Very lucky. So I'm going to play a game with you. So I'm going to get you all stand up, okay?
See me? No? Yes, okay. Right, so I'm going to play a little bit of a game with you. This is a great party trick. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this piece of paper in half, okay? So I've folded this piece of paper in half once, and now it's a piece of paper that's 2 thicknesses. Now I'm going to fold it again, and now it's a piece of paper that's been folded twice, and it's 4 pieces of thickness there. If I do it 3 times, it's now 8 pieces of paper thick. Now, just out of interest, does anyone know how many times you can fold a piece of paper? A bigger part? Louder? 7. And even if we had a piece of paper that was as big as this entire room here, and we used industrial machinery because the Mythbusters guys did this, you would only be able to fold a piece of paper 7 times, because it gets to the point that it's too thick that you can't fold it. Okay. Now, let's forget reality for a moment and assume that you could keep folding this piece of paper, okay? Now, if I folded this sort of 4 times, it's now about a centimetre thick, okay? So if I could fold this piece of paper in half 42 times, it's going to be a certain height off the ground. Now, I don't want anyone to say you can't do it, or it's tented or whatever, or etc., etc. I just want you in your mind to work out and come up with a number of things. I think it's going to be that high. Now, I'm going to go through this, and you're going to sit down when you think it's got to the height. Now, if you're left standing up after I've gone off that height, you're probably going to get laughed at by people around the room, because I might make fun of you. So there's a bit of a test there to make sure that you don't stand up too long, and we don't want anyone to look particularly silly. I will not hurt anyone's feelings, maybe except someone like Bruce or the mayor, because they get insulted all the time by people in the community. So it's a tough gig, and I must admit, I tip my hat to those that want to step up. So, is the pile of paper going to be 10 centimetres or lower? Okay, so that's around sort of ankle height. So if you think the pile of paper is going to be around there, you should sit down now. Okay, no one's sitting down. What about 20 centimetres? So that's about here. That's a reasonable height. So the question? Doesn't matter how big it is, because it's actually the number of times you fold it, the thickness. Okay, so, and it's okay, it's an approximate, it's just an idea to get you to think about something differently. So up to 20 centimetres. Let's just shoot through to about, I don't know, what's that, half a metre? Knee height? Sit down if you think the pile of paper's around there. Okay, let's get crazy and go to a metre. If you're still standing up, you may have already missed the mark. We're going to order you. What about, I'm going to pretend I'm 2 metres just because it makes me feel taller. What about 2 metres?
Calculating.
Yeah, okay. What about 3 metres? That's about 1-storey building. You're still 42 times. Okay. So, all right, let's say 2-storey building, 6 metres. 3 stories is 9 metres. Little quiz question here. What's the tallest building in Waterloo? Anyone know? How tall is it? How tall is it? Someone's got to know how tall the tallest building in Waterloo is. 40 metres. Come on. Surely, if Sue's standing up, is it as tall as the tallest building in Waterloo? Really? It's taller? Okay, let's just go crazy. What's the tallest building in the world? Burj Khalifa? How tall is it? It's about 850 metres. Stand up. Keep standing up if you think it's taller than that. And you guys. How about Mount Everest? How tall is Mount Everest? 8.5. That's close. 8,848 metres. Is it taller than Mount Everest? Seriously? You guys are all going to stay standing up. Okay. All right. Well, if that's the case, I want you to give these guys a round of applause. Does anyone actually know the answer? What is it?
One of my kids told me to stretch the moon.
Bingo.
My children told me that. That's what I saw.
Right.
The answer is, if I folded this piece of paper in half 42 times, it would go from here to the moon. Now that sounds ridiculous, but what I want to do is show you this. This is called exponential growth. It means that in a given period of time, something doubles. So if you folded it 43 times, it would be twice as far as from here to the moon. If you fold it 44 times, it's 4 times the distance. And then at the next time, it's 8 times. And it's a curve that goes up. Now, the reason I wanted to give you that little trick is because my interest is about how systems work, about how things change. It's not about the actual change things. You are the people that will decide what will be changed, but you might not necessarily know how it's going to change or how quickly it's going to change. So Gordon Moore was one of the founders of Intel, and about 40 years ago, he discovered that the amount of computer powering of a chip actually doubled every 24 months, and this has been going now for 40 years. Do you kind of remember 20 years ago when we didn't have computers and technology, and then of course 10 years ago it all happened, and 5 years ago, and now, who here doesn't marvel at how quickly it's all changing right now? Well, that's what it looks like, and it's going to accelerate over time. So we're not going to see technology going in a straight line of change. In a given period of time, it's going to get faster and faster and faster very quickly. And so 2040 is a really good date because it starts to actually make us realise that change is now upon us in a much more rapid way. And I'll give you some examples of that. So before I do, I wanted to put this up. We went around there, and are there any architects in the room? Good. I like building designers. They're practical. I spoke at the Building Designers Victoria gig a couple of weeks ago at the AGM. So I put this up because I think this sort of vision of the future is a load of absolute rubbish. It's just crap. Because what architects do is they design pretty pictures when they've got no work to talk about the future. But my thought is it's not actually what the city looks like. It's going to be how the city operates. It's going to be how citizens use cities. I don't want Warrnambool to look like this in the year 2040. I want Warrnambool to protect its beautiful heritage assets. I want to keep a human scale. I want to see the main street vibrant. I want to see a mix of housing, not just high-rise. I'd love to see low-density housing, medium-density housing and high-density housing that's sensitive to what Warrnambool looks like today. And so it's not the physical form, it's the citizens and how they use cities that is going to change. So I'll touch on that now. I'll give you a couple of quick examples. And the first one is sort of People 2040. Now, my ideas can't be neatly categorised. So you might think that sounds more like technology, or it might sound more like access, might sound more like economics. But I wanted to give you a couple of ideas. So this image I've put up is this whole Internet of Things. Who hasn't heard about smart cities and it's the new thing and all those sorts of things? Well, this is a whole smart cities Internet of Things. This is how technology is going to influence how we use cities into the future. And, I'm not going to speak for an hour. I'm going to do a 3-hour gig now and just go through every single one of those and dull you to sleep. But what I think's wrong with this is there's something missing on this page. I'm going to give you a bit of a tip. People. They don't put people on this. And for me, as an urbanist, cities are all about people. They're not about cars. They're not about buildings, they're not about shops, they're not about footpaths, they're about people. And that's why I'm so excited to see you all here today, because it's really about you. Building cities ain't all about the mayor and the CEO, it's actually about the citizens of the city and what they physically do to make an active difference to their community. So putting that up, that said, just out of interest, hands up, who has got a smartphone on them today? Yeah. So this image represents, to a certain extent, the citizen of the future. You are now all geospatially connected to the curvature of the Earth. Technology will be able to define where you are, how you move, and start to see those patterns. But I said, and my apologies, my slides didn't transfer perfectly. But interestingly enough, in the next week or so, I'm going to be able to put up a hand and say, I don't have a smartphone on me. Because this is the new Apple Watch that was announced, and the red dot actually signifies that it's now LTE connected. It's a phone. I can do the whole Dick Tracy kind of stuff. Looks like a kind of new dance, I'm sure it will be. And this is important because what is going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years in particular, within the life cycle of this plan, is that we're going to go post-smartphone to a certain extent. We kind of now get that in the old days they used to carve things out in rock. Then we had this era, a very long era, long now, of paper. We are now pretty much post-paper. I bet, Bruce, you don't like people printing stuff up at council anymore. You shouldn't. And now we're already having a conversation around the post-smartphone era where the technology becomes much more ubiquitous. And for those of you, ubiquitous means it's all around you. You don't see it, you naturally interact with it. And I'll give you some examples, because these are all recent. Like, this watch was announced about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Some of these devices here were only announced last week. Who knows what this is? I'm not going to... Put your hand up. Who's got one? I'm looking at one. Who put up their hand at the back there? Did you put your hand up? What is it? Yep, it's called Google Home. So I could say, hey Google, what time is it? And it will answer. I can also connect it to a whole pile of smart infrastructure around my home, and I was speaking with Sparky about this before, the opportunity to actually integrate all your electronic devices into this home automation. And the one on the big one there on the right has been out for about a year. You can now buy it in Australia. The one on the left has just been announced, and the small one there, about $130, $140. I've got one because I want my 8-year-old son to grow up innately being able to say, you know, hey Google, who is Beyonce? Which he actually did this week. You don't know Beyonce? Well, anyway, don't ask me, ask the machine. But it's this notion that he or your children or whatever are going to be able to interact with technology in a completely different way. No, for the oldies in the room who don't like technology, because keyboard, computer, etc., it's ubiquitous. You can now talk to your technology, and it becomes much more accessible for everyone. And of course, this is the Alexa, which is the Amazon version. Amazon's coming here at end of next year, and interestingly, they're selling the Alexa smart home talking stuff to insert in devices. So we're looking at my next 4K amplifier, which is what the guy that loves toys, is going to have Google Home, Amazon Alexa embedded in the amp. So I can talk to my amp, I won't use a remote control. You're going to see this in a big way. And why this is really important for building communities is because cities are really great because they're all about people. And one of my problems with planners or urbanists sometimes, not necessarily engineers to a certain extent, they think about the city and they want to make the city great. But the truth is, great streets make great cities. And smart citizens make smart cities. And so if we stop being obsessed with the big picture and started looking at the fine grain of the picture, which is what you're going to do today, is sort of focus on some of the value principles to achieve these outcomes. If you build great streets, one street at a time, one day you wake up and you've got a great city. Whereas, the same with citizens. If you've got a smart citizen who is in a smart home, they're in a smart neighbourhood, or a smart street, in a smart neighbourhood, in a smart region, in a smart city, in a smart state, then you actually wake up and you've got a smart country. We're not quite a smart country yet, but we're working at it. And so it's this notion that the citizen is going to be changed. So whilst there's a lot of talk about smart cities, the truth is the horse is bolted, you are smart citizens. You all use technology in certain ways that you didn't 5 years ago to change the spatial dynamics of your city. And so this is one of the things that I'd really ask you to look at as you thread through these conversations. Anything, I'm not a technological evangelist. I think there are some issues around safety, around privacy, a whole range of things, Wi-Fi speeds, that will change over time. I'm not here to talk about broadband speeds. What I am going to say is this is going to become more pervasive, more ubiquitous, and it's going to become a part of your everyday life. Even if you're technologically illiterate, because you're going to be able to talk to this stuff and it will listen to you. It's already listening to you if you like it or not. And this is another example that I like to put up just for a bit of fun. This is a LifeX bulb. Now, this is an Australian company. This globe is Wi-Fi enabled. It connects to the Google Home. You can turn your globes on and off. You can actually change the colour. This has 16 million colours, this globe. My wife sometimes wonders why I need a globe that's got 16 million colours and is voice activated. But it's this notion of just the fact that we're starting to get to the point where we are looking at how we interact with the built form around us in different ways. And it goes through to the smart home light, the smart street light. And I won't get into this in a lot of detail today, but the smart street light is a great metaphor for where cities are going to go over the next 20 to 30 years. 10 years ago it was sulfur halide, now we're doing LED, but the street light of the future will have a whole range of sensors. You think about how expensive just the camera is in your mobile phone, costs probably only $1, maybe 50 cents. The opportunity to eventually put this sort of technology in every street light around a city and be able to collect all of this information is really going to see us starting to look at our cities in real time. And so you might put a food truck, or you might change the width of the food. Let's say you change the width of the footpath. I love a wide footpath. I love a skinny road. I think what you're doing in your main street is a really good idea. And I think more people that walk past businesses is better than more cars driving past businesses. But what you'll see is if you wind a footpath and you've got this technology, you'll be able to see how quickly or slowly the pedestrians move, the temperature of that environment, how quickly the cars go, how long the cars park for. You'll even be able to see how quickly the car can actually physically park. One example I like giving is if you've got a smartwatch and you're going through an environment where all of this information becomes available. I always remember I was going to a conference in Brisbane to talk about this stuff, and I was hot. And I looked around, and Brisbane got rid of all of their heritage buildings, so it's nowhere near as good looking as Adelaide anymore. And don't mind me. And it's closer. You can just drive down the road and drink real wine, for example. But we'll stop now. And I was hot, and because I'm an urbanist and I love urban design, and they've got rid of all their small buildings, they've got high rise, I worked out there was going to be a wind tunnel effect, like wind races through these big cities because they've got high rises. And I thought, if I take 2 steps this way, I'm going to cool down. I've got this beautiful cool breeze. I was like, yes, town planning nerd, got it right. I'm so cool, quite literally. But you're talking about 15 years from now, let's just say within Warrnambool 2040, if I was walking down the street of Warrnambool and I was too hot, my watch is going to say your temperature has increased. If you take 2 steps to the right, you'll cool down because of the ocean breeze, because you don't have the high-rise buildings, you've got this breeze still permeating the city. And so technology, built form, and citizens will interact in much more intimate ways. That's just one example, and I've only got a little bit of time and I want to give you a grab bag, but that's where cities will go. This information layer will interact with humans in completely different ways. Walking down the main street, for example, you'll be able to sense how many friends on Facebook I've got, how much my income is. I bet your income's declared, on the internet, and so that information will mean when Bruce walks down the main street, everyone will know how much money he's got to spend in the shops, and how much his wife's got, and where she probably shops, and then offer percentage discounts to entice you to come in, based on the fact that Bruce is also on Twitter and has got a whole pile of social media clout. So the more he spends and raves about it on social media, free advertising or better advertising than doing it on TV, because no one really watches TV anymore, for example. So spot the guy that doesn't like journalists, by the way. So economy, I'm starting to get onto that. So I just wanted to give you some examples of the economy. Now, I'm a bit biased because I do love the share economy, and I'll talk a little bit about this in a minute. But the share economy is a great example of how we're rethinking stuff. Could talk about online retail, and I may as well touch on some of that as well, but I'll get to the share economy first. So the share economy is not all about Airbnb. If you look really closely, you might see I'm actually an Airbnb host in Adelaide, a super host. So when you are coming to Adelaide, you can stay out the back, you can stay out. The media call it Mayor B&B. So if you want to stay out there, you can. And we've got a big loft out the back of our house, but my teenage daughter went overseas, it was empty. What do I do with it? And we ran it as an Airbnb. It goes for about $80 to $100 a night. We make about $25,000 a year for less than a day's work a week. We meet people from all over the world, and it's all done through an online digital app, and it's run quickly and easily. I use my phone to respond with voice recognition, and it's a very simple process of connecting to a global community. And this is where we're going. Digital technologies, reorganising people into communities to change economic patterns. And must sort of quickly say, I stayed in one last night behind Liebig Street. So beautiful little spot. That laneway, have you ever seen the red door in that laneway behind number 72? That's where I stayed last night. So, and some other examples that I wanted to share with you about how it's changing the economy. So Bex is from Wellington. She lives in Melbourne on the 35th floor of a building. She's a fitness instructor. She works from 8 a.m, 7 a.m. till about 9 a.m. and from 4 till about 7 p.m. that night. She can't afford to live in the city by herself, and if she wanted to do her job and she lived in the suburbs, she'd have to go in and out twice. It just doesn't work. Welcome to the new economy where jobs aren't 9 to 5 all the time. So Bex has got a little shoebox apartment with a second little, very shoebox room, and she runs that second one as an Airbnb just to afford to live where her customers are. Now, traditional planning, traditional local government would say, we're really worried about the economics of this sort of stuff. We're going to regulate it and control it. But there's a whole pile of people stuff behind it, new economy stuff around it, new jobs, etc. There's a whole wave of different things. This is one I like to put up. This is in Warragul. So I spoke at a conference in Warragul, a couple in their 70s. They used to have a restaurant. They love hospitality. There aren't a whole pile of medium and high density retirement options for people in Warragul, and I bet it's probably the same here in Warrnambool. And so you've got a lot of empty nesters, a lot of older people. Just out of interest, hands up who in this room who lives in a house with empty bedrooms in them? So why are we expanding the fringe of the city in a major way and having the council spend a whole pile of money on roads and pipes and wires when I've just proven that we're not using the existing infrastructure in our city in a highly sustainable way? Now, it's no one's fault. That's how it works. It's how it's worked for the last 100 years. But is it the most efficient use of infrastructure? So at the moment, it's just tourism. I get that. But what if it's being able to jump on that website or a website and see every single listed space in the city that could be used for a temporary art gallery, or startup offices, or a club where people get together to do quilting, or the list goes on. Using community garden meetings, wherever it goes. I told you I mentioned community gardens. It's a different way of doing it. Why can't we use all of the infrastructure and the space we've got in our cities much more efficiently? We could map them out. So, and just to tell you, so it was an amazing experience. I got to meet locals. My money went back into the local community. They cooked me dinner. They cooked me breakfast the next morning. I found out all about the mayor and what the council was doing because I was staying with locals. This is one I drove from Adelaide and I stayed here in Tahara a couple of nights ago on a farm. 25-year-old gay farmer, really old house, staying in his grandfather's house. Really great experience to wake up in the countryside, and who wouldn't want to take their kids to go and spend some time with grandkids in a farm, in a rural environment? But at the moment our planning policies don't necessarily allow this, because you can't have these second dwellings, you can't do tourism on a farm. But when the milk price is down and the farmers are doing it, if we can digitise, if we can diversify, if we can create an entrepreneurial ecosystem, if we can educate the next generation where the milk comes from and why it's important to spend money in the local community, we really fundamentally change the operating system of how our community works. And so that's just one great example. And all the money from Airbnb stuff, yes, I also work on a global advisory board for them, so I am biased, but all the money traditionally means that people don't stay in sort of CBD environments mostly. They stay in neighbourhoods and they spend their money at the local pizza shop and the local, whatever shop. If you stay in a hotel in the middle of a city, you also go and spend your money at a global chain when it comes to shopping and buying stuff, restaurants and food. And so there's something really important, and one of the values I hope you aspire to today is keeping money in the local economy and how you support that. And so it's not Airbnb, it's a metaphor for an ecosystem that we support local economies. One other example that I love of showing local government is a different type of share economy. So who hasn't walked through a beautiful city in the world, looked at the houses and thought, I'd love to see inside one of those houses? Yeah, I'm seeing lots and nods. Yep, absolutely. Well, have I got the answer for you? So Eat With, who's heard of Eat With? Yeah, cool, 2 or 3 people. So Eat With is, I'll give you an example. So if you come to Adelaide, I haven't convinced my wife to do this yet. It's not about the money, for me it's the principle. I could, once every one Wednesday a month, I could put it on there that I'm going to host a dinner. You pay $60, you come to my house, you drink real wine, you have great food, and you get to meet tourists from around the world and you get some time in a local's house. So it's the same as, if you're in New York, you could go and log onto this site and you could go to a New Yorker's home, they cook you dinner, etc., etc. And so you have a local experience. Now, this is changing the economies of our cities. From a local government perspective, liquor licensing, parking, land use zoning, food and safety regulations, it breaks every rule in the book. But Bruce, would you like to go and have dinner in someone's house in New York yourself? Pick a city. No, yeah, you can choose the person. That's it, you can choose the host. You read the host to decide whether you want to be with that person. And so this is a great example of the future is already here. I'll take questions at the end if that's okay. The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. There are 200 cities in the world and not a single council has actually come down on them yet. But this is totally disrupting. Planners love, the main streets where you have the restaurants, leaving streets where all the restaurants are right now, not that us over there. You're not allowed to do that. But this is, would we like an entrepreneurial ecosystem in our community? We want to share more resources. And so you could also rent bikes this way. Another one is public toilets, private toilets. Everyone could list public toilets in the downtown area. Council would spend probably at least $500,000 on public toilets. If your kid needs to go to the toilet, or you might want to shower and put some lippy on before you go out, you can look on a map like this, see where all the public toilets are, where the toilets are available. It'll show you on a GPS how long it's going to take you to walk there. It'll guide you there with your phone. You'll get there, you press a button, it'll unlock electronically, and you might have to pay anywhere between 25 cents to $5, depending on how much the person wants to charge and how good the bathroom is. And all of a sudden, infrastructure is being rewritten. And so these are good examples. There's 100 million electric drills in the United States that have been used for less than 5 minutes. There's hundreds of rooms across this city. There's at least 50 people who have an empty room in this city that could be used for something to change the community. Don't ask what your council can do for you. Ask what you can do for your city. And I'd much rather stay with a local in any one of these rooms and go and stay in a Cold Harvest hotel, for example. And we won't even get into the Uber stuff, but I will just quickly ask, in terms of where it's all going, who's used Uber Pool? Where did you use it? Copenhagen. Oh, just give people a chance to show off where they've been, because Copenhagen. Yeah, that's kind of outrageously beautiful. And I've used it in lots of cities, including Singapore, where some people use it just for commuting. Don't think of Uber as a surrogate for cabs. That's today. That's like saying when flight was invented, the Wright brothers, it won't catch on. How's that going for you? Or that, electricity is just going to be a fad. This is going to fundamentally change how we use cities. And think of it in particular as Facebook. Who's not on Facebook here? Cool. Loud and proud, and I think that's great. But the point is, look at how quickly Facebook has totally consumed our society and been all pervasive in our society. Well, what Facebook hasn't done very well is the share economy. Because, of course, I'm more than happy to have people on an Airbnb platform that I've never met, but have got reviews from other strangers come and stay out the back of my house. But if they're a friend of a friend of a friend, I will lend them my electric drill, or my screwdriver set, or my bicycle, or whatever it is. And so all of a sudden, the entire economic framework starts to change. And so consumerism could quite literally go out the window. The other kind of component to this is, we've got all these big box developments, like, the Harvey Normans and Good Guys, etc., on the fringes of our cities, which have sucked the life out of our downtown. Who hasn't here either said or heard someone say, I can't be bothered going downtown, it's too hard to get a park, I have to pay for it, I can go and I can go to a suburban place and it's cheap and easy. Well, I get that, but you're sucking the life and the soul out of the main street, out of the connections in the community that's created. But I think we're going to see a revitalisation of the main streets because, who here hasn't bought something online that they might buy from one of those big box developments? I even bought stuff from the Good Guys the other day through eBay. And of course, Amazon's coming. And so you're going to start to see these big box developments on the edges of cities really struggle because no one's going to need to jump in their car and go out and buy stuff, because the shop they're going to go to the most is going to be called Australia Post. And Australia Post is in the city centre. It's also in all the neighbourhood centres that create the resilient neighbourhood communities. So this is going to start to see a pattern. And what it means is that when we go to main streets, it will be for meals, it will be for a cup of coffee, it will be for social interaction, it will be for that community-based thing. So we need to think about the main street of the future when we talk about the economic development and how that helps build resilient communities as well. Now, in terms of economics, I've stuck this in economics. This is such a blurred line because it's all going to come together. Who's used virtual reality? Yeah? It's pretty cool, isn't it? I've got a PlayStation VR at home. I tell my wife I need all these technology things for my business. I tell her I need it for my 8-year-old. Spot the Peter Pan. And if you haven't used VR, give it a crack, because it really is amazing. My father-in-law, who's in his 70s, my mum, who hates technology, their first word was wow. And so if you don't like using an iPhone or iPad, doesn't mean you can't stick a VR headset on and have a quick gander, because you will be blown away. But what's more important is augmented reality. Now, this sounds very futuristic, only Apple's new iPhone 10 now has a whole pile of new software and hardware including in it for augmented reality. Now, Apple's now already put out an augmented reality developers kit for people to start doing augmented reality stuff. And this is going to change how we see communities and how we move through cities. So once again, I can actually, using augmented reality, maybe on my phone, I can see Bruce's income. I can see who has got the most number of mutual friends, probably Amy. We've probably got quite a few mutual friends. You know, I can see who's got the highest score as a customer on Uber. I can see who's got the lowest score. I can see who's nice and who's not nice by all this information overlaid on your head. And this is now, this is coming. And I'll give you some examples of this. And for wayfinding, it's really important. Probably for time, I'll use this one. So the future of transport and how people use money and spend money is going to be, I've got to get from here to Adelaide. Now, I will use augmented to say, look, there's a bus leaving in 20 minutes. It's going to take you 3 minutes to walk there, and it will cost you this much money. Let's not say Adelaide, let's just sort of say another part of Warrnambool. There's a share bike within 30 seconds. There's Bruce's kids going past. We've got a trust level now. Bruce's kids are going in the same direction. You'll be able to jump in that car with them. But you actually need to walk because you haven't consumed enough calories yet today, and you need to achieve a certain goal, and you need to leave in the next 10 seconds to do that walk if you're going to get there. And that's how wayfinding is going to change through some augmented reality. There's another one I like putting up. Augmented reality is here. Anyone going to tell me that Pokemon Go didn't have an influence on Warrnambool? Yeah? I like Pokemon Go because it shows every placemaker, every mayor, every planner that they've been doing a pretty average job for the last 100 years, and it took one little tech company to help people invade the streets of their city. And it wasn't just a waste of time. Every single council asset was geospatially tagged. The bench with a plaque on it, the community centre, the town hall, the library. You know, kids were able to go up to a statue, look at the statue, identify it on a map, flick their phone and get a reward for interacting with a statue that they would never have seen before. And it really changed how people activated cities. And you're going to see a whole pile of more computer gaming and cities, you know, whether it's going to be running around doing Star Wars kind of stuff or Ghostbusters or capturing. It's all about fighting. I reckon make cities not war, but we're going to see a lot more hostile gaming in our urban environments as well. Financially, this is another one. Who knows what this is? It's Bitcoin. Now, I'm not going to talk in detail about this because I'm still kind of researching furiously, but I just wanted to touch on this notion of blockchain. So a lot of you have heard of blockchain. It's really new, and if you haven't, I'm not going to make it complicated. What I am going to say is that blockchain is a computer system that is a distributed ledger. Now, my wife's an accountant. I hate finances, so I'm not very good at it. But most of us know what a ledger is. For those that don't, a ledger is just sort of inputs and outputs, money spent, money going in, someone writing. It used to be with a quill, writing. That's how ledgers were created to run a business. Distributed means that instead of the accountant doing it, the council doing it, the government doing it, or a business doing it, every single one of you could manage a distributed ledger for us. And that distributed ledger could be blockchain, it could be Bitcoin, it could be a whole range of digital currencies, but it could also be other things. It could be me selling my electricity in Adelaide to a friend in Warrnambool. It could be a next door neighbour selling their electricity to the next door neighbour. If it takes about 150 litres to make one steak. If I was a vegetarian and I had a small garden, and I gave up chocolate, because that actually also has a lot of water use in it, I'd be really boring. But I'd use a lot less water. And somewhere in the next 20 years or so, we're all going to get water allocations, and using a blockchain technology, I will be able to sell my water allocation to someone in this room. If I recycle all my precious metals, my batteries, my technology, I will also potentially, and this is being documented now, be able to sell my precious metal allocation to someone to a company who is buying all this stuff up. And so it's going to get to the point where I don't give a rat's ass about whether we have a federal government, state government, or a local government, and whether we get rid of the state government or not, because that's the logical one to get rid of. I don't care, because we're going to see self-organised communities buying and selling and getting on and just doing this stuff. We're all going to be entrepreneurs who have resources that we can buy and sell to our family, our friends, our neighbours, our community. And I call this notion of sort of self-organised communities where we start to manage our own infrastructure. The thing is, we won't just do it ourselves, we'll have technology to help us. And this is a good example. This is Elon Musk's new solar roof that actually has cheaper to build than a traditional roof in the States, but is full solar power and creates energy. So we're going to talk about place. And by the way, I'm going to note, speaking of technology in cities, the place logo that we've used is a digital place logo, which is really kind of representative of the sorts of things that I'm talking about. In place, I'm just going to touch on a few things, but one of them is going to be transport. I'm going to bash cars really badly. I'm not sorry about that at all. I do it fiercely and proudly. But I'm going to say I love cars. That's the car I had a few years ago. So, you know, don't sort of walk out the room thinking I'm some sort of lunatic who hates cars. I've got a German car now, I've got a Volkswagen, I love it. But this is something that we need to understand. Like, you know, I don't want anyone to get to the point where they say, for economic development, we should need more car parks downtown, because it's wrong. I'm sorry, whether you like it or not. I hate to be kind of like hardcore preacher. I like to ask questions rather than give you answers. But this is where cities are going to go into the future. And the irony is, the easier you make it to park downtown, the more people are going to drive downtown, and you're just going to never, ever, ever have enough car parking. It's a feedback loop. It's kind of like this notion that, you know, to provide more car parking downtown is like loosening your belt to deal with obesity. You're still going to have traffic jams, you're still going to have noise, you're still going to have unpleasant environments, and who here wants to have a retail experience next to a traffic jam? Who wants to take their partner out for a romantic dinner next to a car park? So this is not what we want to create for our downtown environments. It's not about anti-car though, it's about an integrated transport system. This is the Gold Coast Rail. When they proposed this, everyone on the Gold Coast who drives their cars said, really dumb idea. Waste of money, it's never going to happen. It has gone nuts. It is totally beyond capacity, and they're already now doing stage 2. And that's in a really car-centric environment. And it's about choice. It's about, yes, you might have a car, but you might choose to leave it home because it might be easier to get somewhere as well. And it is about integrated transport. It is about cycling. It is about walking. It's about having housing downtown. You know, I'd like traders to say, we don't want more car parks, we want more houses downtown. So people have to walk to our places, because they'd have to jump in a car and drive somewhere else, and why would they do that? They'll spend their money locally. And so it's really thinking about transport. And so this is the place thing of accessibility is really important. Now I'm going to give this a go. Fingers crossed, it didn't work last time. Here we go. I want to play this.
You could save a few dollars sacrificing the little things. Or you could save thousands by talking to an Aussie mortgage broker today. Talk to Aussie this spring and you'll go in the draw to win your mortgage paid for a year.
Adam Ruins Everything is a guy that
online today.
debunks lots of myths.
We'll save you.
And this is a great little video that I wanted to share with you.
Here's the story of how the car took over the American street. A century ago, the city street was a public place that was open to everyone. It was shared by pedestrians, horses, and weird old-timey bicyclists alike. Not to mention streetcars that took people to work.
Now, Teddy, you have a fun day at the sweatshop. And remember, always walk in the street. It belongs...
So the point is that, you know, there's lots of other material I could go on about there, but the point is that in terms of thinking about our cities, they're actually for people, and we really need to make sure that we reclaim these spaces and rethink the role of the vehicle. And this is a really wonderful slide that gives you an example of this. And I know, Warrnambool's not a big population, it's going to increase over time, and etc. But you can see how many people it takes to move 60 people in a car, in a bus, and by bicycle. And once again, it's not about getting rid of the car, but it's about saying these are the integrated responses we need to give people choice. There's a couple of young people here. Have you got your driver's licence yet? You have? No? So how do you get around? Your mum drives you. And probably because it's not safe to ride a bicycle because there's so many cars on the road. 3% of kids ride their bicycles to school today, and that's because it's not safe, so their parents drive. So we have more cars on the road, so it's not safe for any kids to ride their bicycles. You can see this feedback loop dynamic we're talking about. And of course, if you're a kid and you have to have a car, there goes the first 20 grand of your life that could have otherwise gone on education, on putting a deposit on a home, starting a small business, the list goes on. But the irony is that cars, I'm really going to bash them now, they're going to disappear. They really are going to disappear. And you can see here, this is Mercedes-Benz data that says 75% of all vehicles on the road within the cycle of this plan are going to be autonomous vehicles. Now, they're not going to be driverless cars because that's like calling them horseless carriages. They're going to be something completely different, and I haven't really got enough time to cover that today. But these are the sorts of changes that we're going to start seeing for our cities, and there's going to be huge impacts. Now, interestingly enough, France, Germany, China, India, and Norway have all said they're going to ban an internal combustion car by the year 2040. Now, I do a bit of surveys on this, and I know someone in this room is saying, I'm never going to give up my car. But when that car costs you 25 grand a year to buy, run, etc., and you can walk out the door, jump in an autonomous vehicle and get dropped off exactly where you're going, and you can do that all year for half the price, eventually someone's going to tap you on the shoulder and say, dude, seriously? And to say that we will never get rid of the internal combustion car off the streets, I can't see any horse and cart out there. We got rid of those as well. Life goes on and time changes. Denmark, speaking Copenhagen, is saying 2030. So I'm putting it out there, this conversation for the country. We must have a conversation around when will the internal combustion engine leave our cities. And so it is going to be not only an autonomous future, but it's going to be an electronic future. It's not just going to be electric cars. It's going to be my bicycle, going from that to having a battery in it. There's 2 electric bikes just out there if you haven't. They're council ones, so anyone can have a go. They're your bikes. Use them. Go for a spin. And there's a whole range of other stuff. My son can buy this off the internet right now. 40 kilometres an hour, 40k range. You can charge this for about 50 cents. You could use this to get to the train station, sit on your lap, get into Melbourne, jump on there, scoot down to where you're going, charge it at work, come home. Last mile connectivity, which changes the whole paradigm of how we remove cities. And there's a whole range of different ways that we can look at transport. This one is a good one. When people talk about autonomous cars, they're making the mistake of using the word car, because it's autonomous everything. Even me driving from Adelaide to here, I use GPS. I was semi-autonomous. I was just going where I was told. They're doing this delivery stuff now in the UK. Parcels under 2.3 kilos now can be delivered by a drone. So what's the role of drones in our city? I did ask the question about whether council had a drone. Apparently there's a story there. The councils are now using drones to actually check infrastructure and do it from accessibility points that others can't. And this looks so futuristic, only this is happening in Dubai right now. Autonomous flying taxis delivering people in Dubai. It's today. This isn't overly futuristic. A couple of quick changes too, just to sort of pop things in there. This is the first 3D printed office building in the world. This one is a building of 12 apartments built in China with a 3D printer in 24 hours. This is going to entirely change the economies. I love asking planners if it takes 24 hours to build, why is it going to take 3 months to assess the application? Crazy stuff. This is going to be an 80-storey tower in England called called the Splinter. Glass shard, wood splinter. It's a wooden building. So smart cities and the future is not just all about sort of technology, it's about innovation and the ways we look at things. I'm pretty much out of time, but I wanted to just touch on this Splash Adelaide and placemaking stuff as well. I know you have a placemaker in town, Andrew, from Place Focus. I think he probably mentioned Splash Adelaide because it was kind of like an iconic thing. This happened when I was Lord Mayor. And Splash Adelaide was this notion that we engaged the community and small businesses to come in and actually help activate spaces. So one thing I really want you to think about today is not just, the responsibility of building stuff, but it's how we act communities to bring places to life. And these are all examples of inventive, creative, cheap opportunities to transform your city and get the residents, get the small businesses to own the activities. Once again, small council, big community. Right now we all expect our council just to do everything for us. And Bruce and I were talking that neither of us could go down to the pub without having someone tell us we need to do something. Well, the opportunity is through placemaking and these sorts of activities is to actually get, the community to be involved. Road closures, markets, events, activities, food trucks. There's a whole range of tools that we can use that are innovative, create entrepreneurial ecosystems and engage the community in being involved in the process. And so, guerrilla gardening is a part of this, getting people to actually plant in the streets. Do you need a permit? Do you really need a permit to plant flowers, etc.? But the one I was going to mention on community garden is that share economy notion too. I wanted to give you this idea, that somewhere in the future I will be able to plan a meal with carrots in it because someone within 800 metres of my home will be pulling carrots out on that day and I will have bought those carrots as they're still in the community garden. And so all of a sudden we'll start growing stuff because we know we'll be able to use it ourselves or sell it. It'll probably get delivered by drone within 2040. So I'll just leave this. I'll just get on to the environment stuff. I'm not going to do the traditional environment stuff. I am going to say though that there's going to be a huge amount of more data in our environments, and we're creating that data at an exponential growth at the moment. Where is that all going? This is just to finish off. So this is a map of how technology's evolved over time. By the year 2030, your mobile phone will be connected via cloud to a computer that is smarter than every single person in this room. My son is 8. By the time he finishes university, computers will be smarter than him. By 2035, they'll probably be twice as smart, if not 4 times as smart. And that's that exponential curve stuff happening. And what this really means is that I hope that we get to the point of which community plan that says 2040 or beyond actually acknowledges that artificial intelligence is going to redefine the operating system of our cities. There's a futurist, you've got to be slightly crazy, and you might have picked that up already. The critical date is actually 2045, which you don't get to. The experts are saying if you live to the age of 2045, and there's no one in the room over the age of 40, so you're all going to do that, you will be able to download your consciousness onto a machine and live forever. That's this exponential growth. This is from here to the moon stuff. This is how rapidly it's going to change. And cities are complex patterns, and if you've all got an AI in your pocket and all those AIs are connected, you have a cognitive city that's going to change physically how you move through cities and how you interact with cities in an information ecological process. We should be much more efficient, much more sustainable, and much more productive. And I'm probably being turned off at time. And so what I would say is this notion of ants is this reorganisation of how ants work. There's no single leader, there's no mayor, there's no CEO, there's no governor, there's no premier, thank goodness, no prime minister. They organise themselves in this way, they create amazing things. And this is where humans will go, from sort of agriculture through to sort of caveman, through to agriculture, through to the birth of cities, through to modern cities, and then ultimately reorganising patterns. So we all use this technology to change how we move through cities, how we connect to each other, how we interact with the economy, how we interact with the environment, and how we move through places. And just as a final example to give you, I wanted to put this up. At the moment we have a road, a footpath, hopefully it's a bicycle lane, then it's a car parking spot, then it's a bus lane, and then it's a car, and then we swap it around and it goes in the opposite direction. But what happens in a geospatially connected digital future, where we've got all these different types of electric
when you were told to walk on the left-hand side of the road, old school, well, why don't we rethink this space on technology and say, instead of a footpath, that's the 5 km/h zone. And the next space is the 10 km/h zone, and the space after is the 40 km/h zone. You see guys running on a footpath, and they're interacting with kids and disabled people. The guy, if there's running a girl fast enough, they should be in the bicycle lane. It shouldn't be a bicycle lane, it should be the 20 km/h. And so this is just a good example of how technology could potentially change physically how cities work. Finishing off now, I always get asked, you know, what should I see? I love my sci-fi, etc. Star Trek is slow for me, but I've got to tell you, this is a movie I highly recommend. It's a bit of a chick flick, but it's great for the whole family, and it's how people can interact with technology. Most sci-fi misses a whole pile of key stuff around artificial intelligence and how it relates to people. On that basis, I've only got a couple of minutes to answer some questions, but I'm going to be around all day, and I hope that's helped you think about the fact that don't use the rear vision mirror today to plan the future. It looks completely different, and I'd encourage you to think about what is possible, what is preferable, rather than what is, and the potential, rather than sort of what is likely to happen based on what's happening today. And finally, I'll just thank you again for being here, and I encourage you to all either change the you want to see